Buncombe County Board of Adjustment. I'm Jim Lesko, the chairman for today. I'll ask the members to self-introduce themselves.
Sure. I'm James Wilson with South Asheville.
I'm David Hall.
Jim Guido Beaverdan.
Peggy Mann, Limestone.
Hi, Robbie Taylor.
John Yurko, Weaverville.
Lisa Stevens, South Asheville.
All right, you've all received a copy of the minutes of the May 11th, 2011 meeting. Are there any corrections? Hearing none, the minutes will stand as submitted. Okay, we'll open a public hearing. And Planning Department, what have you for us?
Do you want to swear everyone in or do it?
Yeah, well, we can do that now, or we can do it after you.
Sure. If all witnesses that are expected to be testifying in your public hearing, if you come up at this time, so the chairman can swear or affirm you in for your testimony.
If you're going to speak, you have to be sworn in.
Unless you're an attorney. You're acting on behalf of your client. So. Anyone else planning on speaking?
Anyone else?
You all could just...
Go over and put your hand on the Bible there. You solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
The first case before the board is Philip Shane Hollifield has applied for a conditional use permit for a
Can you
planned.
be a little closer to the mic? You're a little hard to hear.
Sorry. Has applied for a conditional use permit for a planned unit development to site 2 additional dwelling units on tax lot pin 9644722954 at 78 New Rockwood Road. The property is zoned R3. There are currently 3 dwelling units on the property. There are 2 homes, a mobile home, and then a storage building. And Mr. Hallfield would like to convert the storage building into 2 additional units. The fire marshal has approved the access to the property, but he may inspect the 2 additional dwelling units if they are converted. And we received 1 call regarding the case, and that was from the tenant who lived on the property, but he was just concerned with what was going on the property.
All right?
And there's no variances being asked for, right?
No, this is just a conditional use permit for planned unit development. It does meet the the density requirement for the underlying zoning district.
Okay, who will be presenting?
I will.
What's your name?
Shane Hollifield.
Okay.
You want me to stand or sit?
Just sit down there and
Okay.
tell us what you intend to do.
Well, I have a building that I've just used for storage, in which I'm wanting to convert initially just 1 single-family residence, and the rest is going to be storage still. But I'm asking for 2 if later on, I guess I have 5 years. If within that 5 I decide to make another one, but initially it's just for 1 right now.
Sir, you have a year to begin construction of the project. You didn't request vesting rights for the additional unit, so you'd have to complete the 2 units in a year.
Okay.
No.
It's also possible that you can come back and ask for an extension if you don't have a second unit completed by the time before your year expires, or reapply.
Okay. Well, what I'm hoping to do is I'm hoping to do 1 right now. Does that mean? I'm not exactly sure what that means.
Do you understand the concept of vested rights?
No.
Could someone explain?
Basically, a vested right is where you are essentially stating, this is what I'm planning on doing, and you're getting a permit to sort of vest you. You would, in a sense, be vesting yourself for a year to be able to build the 2 residential structures that you wish to do. However, a conditional use permit does expire within a year if you don't start work on both the projects. So if you're planning on just fixing 1 residence, you're fine, but it's that second residence that you need to start in a year or before you need to apply for an extension,
Okay.
which is possible. But what that basically does is if they grant your conditional use permit, you will have the right to build it according to the zoning ordinance as in existence right now. So if, let's say, tomorrow or the next day, someone changes the zoning ordinance, you would basically be operating under this. You would, under North Carolina law, you'd have a statutory vested right if they grant a conditional use permit.
Okay. Well, I was just, I thought it was 5 years. What you're saying is it's 1 year. Is
Right.
that correct?
Unless the North Carolina General Assembly passes another act that extends permits, which they did in the past. And that's maybe where you got the impression that it was 5 years, because there was a state law that extended all unexpired permits, but that's ending.
Okay, that's where I was not too clear upon that.
You want to move ahead under those conditions?
Yes, I do.
All right. Tell us what you're going to do.
I'm basically going to make a single-family unit, 2-bedroom, 2.5 bath, or 1.5 bath, which is take an existing building and turn it into living space.
Are you going to convert, you keep saying that you're going to convert the building, you're just going to remodel that building for it to become a house?
Correct.
Essentially, and then, but you said part of it would remain as storage, so will that be still connected?
Well,
Or will it be
there's-
a separate outbuilding?
According to the building codes, I have to do a 3-hour fire separation between the two. So in essence, they're connected but not connected, if that makes any sense at all. The 3-hour fire separation has to separate the two sides. But it's,
Is it done not by absence, but by material, or how is the separation?
it's a
accomplished?
block. It's a
Block,
3-hour
wall.
block wall from the cutting a new footer,
Right.
basically cutting the structure in half.
And building a wall is in between
All
the two.
the
is
way,
essentially what you're doing.
right.
3 hours, that's pretty substantial construction.
Well, it's because of storage on the other side. And I could do a 1 hour if there wasn't going to be storage on the other side.
All right. Is there any further questions from up here? Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this matter? All right, I'm going to close the public hearing at this time. And Mr. Hall, is the information you provided to the board true and accurate to the best of your knowledge and ability?
Hollifield?
Hollifield, yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do I hear a motion?
I move we approve, based on the evidence presented to this board, including the following exhibits: the petitioner's application, the submitted development plans, the GIS map, the findings of fact and worksheet. I move that this board adopt the following findings of fact, items 1 through 6. Let's see, where we go?
UV, I think.
V, through 6V.
Okay.
6A, if you want to approve it.
6A
6A? Well, you're right, 6A,
through V.
6A,
You went through 6A.
right. You have your 6A, and there are subs for it that go through V.
Right.
Yeah. All right, is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Okay.
Who
Madam
seconded?
Secretary, did you get that?
Yurko.
Peggy made the motion and Jim Guido seconded the motion. Okay, is there any further discussion? All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Let the minutes show that there was a unanimous vote to support. Okay.
I have just one question. I know we voted, but you said 2-bedroom, 2.5 bath. Plans show 1.5 bath.
No, it's 1.5.
Okay. You've got impact statements from sewer and water for 1.5 baths.
Correct. And that's what I'm doing.
That's what you're
One,
gonna do.
it's 2-bedroom, 1.5
baths.
bath.
Gotcha. Okay.
All right. You want to make the motion to approve the application?
I move that we approve this application.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion to approve the application has been seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Let the minutes show there's a unanimous vote to support. And that was, the motion was by Peggy and seconded by
James
James
Wilson.
Wilson. That's a little longer today. We have a new secretary, and she's not quite familiar with the faces over here, so we're trying to give a little hand on that.
Thank you.
All right, go ye and build.
Yeah.
We have the next application. We have three separate cases for the Biltmore estate. They are proposing a 152-room, approximately 145,000 square foot hotel lodge facility on the estate. They are applying for a conditional use permit for a planned unit development, a conditional use permit for a hotel, and a variance in height of 35 feet. The underlying CS zoning district allows 50, so the total height of the structure would be 85 feet. The estate itself is in the Biltmore Estate Historic Property Overlay, and the CS zoning district is the underlying zoning district. There are some inconsistencies between those two, the overlay and the underlying zoning district. For example, hotels are allowed in CS, but they're conditional in the overlay district. PUD is conditional in the CS zoning district, and then CS allows 50 feet in height, and then the overlay district allows 80 feet in height. Staff is aware of this. We have started discussions with the Biltmore Estate how to rectify those inconsistencies. We'd just like to thank the Biltmore Estate for applying for all the necessary permits and following the ordinance to the T, dotting their I's and crossing their T's and making sure everything's okay. So the first application, again, is for a conditional use permit for a planned unit development. And then they are applying for a conditional use permit for a hotel, and then the variance. They have submitted plans to stormwater. I just got a letter today that they've been approved for stormwater. They just have to submit their financially responsible party information. They have approval from the fire marshal, and then they have gotten all necessary documentation from City of Asheville Water and Sewer.
All right. If you're going to speak, we're going to have to swear you in.
We already did that.
Did these folks come up? I don't think so.
Well, he did.
He did.
Oh,
He did. Mrs. Bryce is the attorney.
okay, all right. All right, now to try to make this an orderly process, we're going to listen to your complete presentation here, and then we will go through a laborious process of 2 conditional use permits and a variance. And I think that'll make the process more orderly than trying to do it sequentially and have you repeat yourself over and over. So with that said, tell us what you would like to do.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, Vice Chairman, board members, I'm Patsy Bryson. I'm an attorney with Roberts and Stevens Law Firm. We represent the Biltmore Company in these applications. And you're going to hear something unusual from a lawyer. I'm not going to talk much more. We have someone with all the technical expertise to explain to you the project and how it complies with the conditional use permit requirements, the PUD requirements, and the basis for the variance request. The only other thing that I would say is that we agree with what Ms. Phillips said about there being some inconsistencies between the underlying commercial service district and the overlay district. One of them permits hotels, and the other one says they're a conditional use permit. And the other one has a maximum, a maximum height of 50 feet. That's the commercial service district. But the overlay district allows 80 feet and then up to 100 feet for each 2 feet of setback, you get an additional height, additional 1 foot in height. So if you take the overlay, we're okay. And if you take the underlying for the use, we're okay. But it's because of these inconsistencies that we now appear before you. So I'm going to let Bruce Hazard with Design Management speak to our application, and after he's concluded, I'll say more about how we comply and offer our exhibits into evidence. Bruce, go ahead.
I want to thank the Board of Adjustments for listening to us today. I'm the token consultant that doesn't wear black for the meeting. But as Patsy alluded to, discussions with staff and these inconsistencies, as we sort of put all that aside because we've been trying to deal with that for a while, and accepted sort of the most stringent of both sections of the code and decided that that's what we'd bring before you and sort of apply for. So we do have three components. We have a conditional use request for a new lodge or a hotel hospitality use on the estate. Second to that is a planned unit development approval. Since we exceed the underlying commercial service district cap in the county of 50,000 square feet, so we're required to come through the PUD process. And then thirdly, because of other instances, we're asking for a height variance, which is somewhat between the two different zoning ordinances allowances. So with that, I just go through those consecutively. Overall, as staff alluded to, this is a 152-room proposed hotel. You have some of the graphic documentation in front of you as to what the character and the massing of it is. It's located in the central part of the estate. It's approximately 1.5 miles setback to the estate boundary, so we're a little bit of an odd duck in that regard. It's right around 145,000 gross square feet, including decks, terraces, all the physical components of the property. And we're at a 85-foot height limit as it's measured by Buncombe County in their zoning ordinances. And we'll talk more about that toward the end. From a conditional use standpoint for a hotel and a lodge, all the roads on the estate and utilities on the estate, for the most part, are private. They meet all the standards or exceed the standards of the county in terms of access, pavement, widths, and we continue to maintain and operate those as private roads. From a utility standpoint, water service, while it's provided to the edge of the estate, once you're inside the estate, all the water systems, distribution systems, and transmission lines are all private. But yet we consistently go back and deal with the city of Asheville in terms of total water consumption. And when we came to them a couple of years ago and talked about a new use, we've been working with them over the last couple of years and making adjustments to the system within the estate to handle this capacity. And hence we now have a service demand agreement from them for water. Same can be said of the Metropolitan Sewer District. Their main trunk line runs along the French Broad River through the estate. This proposed project would have a service line connection that goes down and connects to a manhole on another service line, which is up out of the valley floor and out of the floodplain. Parking, our private roads and utilities are pretty much covered, we think, in terms of meeting the intent and the requirements of the zoning ordinance. From a parking standpoint, we currently, in the proposed plan, exceed the parking demand requirements of the county threefold. The county cumulatively would require us to have about 111 parking spaces. We have 374, mainly because through past history, we've seen that the demands as a destination require more parking than what the county typically would require for even for a hospital, or not a hospital, but a hospitality component elsewhere in the county. Plus, we have a larger percentage of service to guest ratio on the estate than you would normally have. So those, in essence, get us to about 374 parking spaces, including overflow parking for special events. From a hotel standpoint, we have limited visibility off of the estate to the proposed site and vice versa because of its location central to the estate and the fact that the building is tucked back into the forest areas. The surrounding trees are between 80 and 90 feet in height, and the maintenance of those and the preservation of those is a bottom line requirement of anything within the estate. Second to that is any new developments within the estate can't impinge upon, as a sort of unwritten rule, or provide any impacts to the Biltmore House and Gardens, which is the core reason for the estate to be there and why most people come. So different than the inn that was built a little over 10 years ago, it has views of Biltmore House, and Biltmore House does not have views of the inn. This particular location and the design of it is such that it's not seen by the inn, nor is it seen by any guest at the house, nor does it have a view of the house. It only has a view of the distant mountains. It is a 24/7 use and occupancy, as is typical of any hotel. We've had, I think, good success in dealing with large numbers of people coming through the estate. And since the inn was up and operating, we've been able to deal now with 24/7 occupancy of the estate, which we really hadn't had for 100 years since the Vanderbilts lived there. So now we have guests staying the night and staying through the weekends. We think that from a conditional use standpoint, a hotel is consistent with the underlying commercial service district intent as an applicable use for commercial service. It also is consistent with the Biltmore Estate Historic Overlay, which we worked with the county in reviewing and giving comments on several years ago. That overlay, in effect, does a couple of things. One, it recognizes existing uses that were on the estate when zoning was put into place. And it recognizes those not only as being there and existing, but also being compatible with the underlying commercial service and with the long-range intent of the estate. So hotels are a part of that. We had anticipated that those would be conditional uses in our early discussions, mainly because we felt that anything within the estate needed the additional rigor of review from a design standpoint. And in the overlay, we felt that we would be more rigorous in sort of self-imposing design criteria on us than any outside jurisdiction. So we don't feel that in terms of the conditional use of a hotel on the estate that it creates any adverse effects to the public health, safety, or welfare. So that leads us to the second part of the application, which is the planned unit development. As I mentioned earlier, and Jillian mentioned as well, the underlying commercial service district allows 50,000 square feet of gross square footage. And it allows by process anything in excess of that to go through a planned unit development, which starts to further look at the design criteria, the massing, looks at lighting, looks at any potential off-site or adjacent property impacts and such. So this project is in excess of 50,000 square feet. Like I said, it's about 145,000 gross square feet. Again, it's consistent with the allowed uses and the historic uses on the estate, i.e. the inn that exists now, which is quite a bit larger in terms of height, bulk, mass, and number of rooms. The inn has a little over 200 rooms in it, and this would be 152. Again, from a planned unit development standpoint, our whole approach to this is as long as we minimize the footprint, minimize disturbance, minimize the clearing, is that we could assure ourselves and anybody else that you wouldn't be able to see this thing from anywhere off of the estate. Again, we talked about the parking requirements. We exceed those demands threefold in terms of pedestrian trails, hiking trails, horseback riding trails, open space systems. All of our proposal within this connects this to those systems and has very minimal impact. There's one section of a horse trail that we're going to relocate during construction, and if it doesn't cause any problems, then we'll keep it in that same position, same location. And then those trails will be extended up to the new lodge when it's ultimately built. so that guests can leave there and hike around as part of the bigger estate. As we talked about, we have our approvals and will serve letters from Water MSD. We've also met several times extensively over the last couple of years with the fire marshal, both the previous fire marshal before he retired and the current one, specifically looking at criteria for access roads, widths of roads, locations of hydrants, fire department connections, water requirements, as well as internal building systems for firefighting and protection. And we've resolved all those issues, and the site plan and the graphic documents that you have in front of you reflect those agreements that we have with the district. We think the design is compatible with other buildings and structures within the estate, and in fact it draws from a lot of that. Part of another underlying goal within the estate is that the design of various components are compatible and somewhat talk to each other. There's a history to the estate that we don't want to go outside the boundaries of that too far. We do push the envelope sometimes, but it all eventually goes back to what we're trying to protect and the story we're trying to tell. And that goes to also helping us alleviate any off-site impacts relative to the color palette that we're choosing, the materials that we're choosing, minimizing any reflectivity, of which we have low E emission windows that do that. We have broad overhangs on the design of it. In porches where we do have expanses of glass, we have overhangs and or low reflective glass that we're utilizing. The materials are somewhat dark and natural in basis, stone on the base, wood and composite materials. We're utilizing a high percentage of recycled materials. The roof material is a synthetic slate appearing recycled composite material, as are some others on the site. We have no external uplighting on the building. As is typical on the estate, we don't uplight the house. We don't uplight any of the significant structures on the estate. The parking lot lighting and landscape lighting are all sharp cutoff luminaires that point down. They don't point up into the sky. We don't have significant signage on the estate. The signage is very low-key, low-played. While there is some lighting on the signage, there's no backlighting of signage within the estate. So again, all those things culminate, as well as the preservation of the trees and the forest on the estate, to minimize off-site impacts, as well as the fact that it's a mile and a half away from anybody. So the requesting, the other component of the PUD that we have to address is we are requesting a height variance. And the height variance helps us as well to limit impacts on the site as well as off the site by minimizing the footprint, minimizing the tree clearance, minimizing the grading, and some potential erosion and stormwater effects that would occur because of that, and some other issues. So from a PUD standpoint, we don't believe that we've sort of exceeded any of the requirements or create any negative impacts on adjacent properties, nor on ourselves being the largest adjacent sort of property owner. The third component that we're asking for is a variance in terms of height. As Betsy and staff alluded to, the commercial service district allows a 50-foot height without coming in for a request for variance. When the zoning ordinance was being put together, our discussions with staff at that point in time, 2 to 3 years ago, were part of that sort of adopting of what were existing uses within the estate. That also included the Biltmore House as well as the inn, which had been completed 5 or 6 years prior to that when those discussions began. And both of those structures are significant in mass and in size and in height. Hence the language that's in the overlay district that allowed us to go up to an 80-foot baseline height and then exceed beyond that depending on how far we were away from the boundary and whether we were seen from off-site or not. But we also established a 100-foot cap because predominantly the forest cover and the lay of the land on the estate can accommodate between a 90 and 100-foot height for the most part without being seen off-site. Plus, anything beyond 100 feet in height starts to impact back to the Biltmore House and the million or so guests that are coming to see that and not necessarily see these other structures scattered out on the landscape. So with that in mind, the locations within the estate are limited somewhat as to where we can expand and add new amenities and add new structures. We went through an analysis, a GIS analysis that looked at the existing Biltmore house. We looked at the height of tours at the upper level and also rooftop tours, and then also established a forest cover height on the entire estate. And as part of that analysis, we identified a number of locations where additional amenities and structures of different sizes, heights, and mass can be accommodated without causing harm to the house and the views from that. So it's a view shed study. We also did the same from surrounding properties, and then the overlay of both of those established some sites within the estate that are somewhat open for us to evaluate if we want to add things at a later point in time. This is indeed one of those locations. It has constraints that says if you build there are limitations in terms of what you can see from it, but clearly it establishes that you can't be seen from outside of where this is, and it doesn't do harm internally to us. Also, the nature, as you're well aware of Buncombe County and on the estate, the 8,000 acres on the estate, is that the terrain around here is somewhat steep and somewhat gently rolling. The flat areas are typically in floodplain areas, so by the time you take those areas out of consideration, you take the steep slopes out of consideration, most of the development starts to happen on ridge lines. And this is located at the end of a ridge line that also happens to have minimal impacts because it's in close proximity to existing utilities. So we're not doing long utility runs, digging up a lot of stuff and extending and doing additional tree clearing. Given that location, if we stayed within the 50-foot height limit of the commercial service district, it tends to make a structure long and low. Long and low structures in most of our terrain doesn't work very well. So the opposite of that is to try and reduce the footprint. You reduce the footprint and you try to meet the life health safety codes of fire codes, hallway distances, travel distances in emerging situations. Footprints tend to get compacted, and when they do, structures go up. So when they go up in height, it not only gives us an economy of scale, clearly because we're building a smaller foundation, but it helps us to minimize the amount of grading work that we do, so long as we stay within the confines of what we've established as a three-dimensional envelope of the maximum heights. So with the life safety issues, with the terrain issues, with the type of use as a hotel, and with the adherence that we're doing and staying within the family of the historical architecture within the estate, all of those elements add up to our request that we're coming in for the height variance. And the other thing to keep in mind on the height variance is two things. One is the structure as it's currently designed and as we've been working on it, the 50-foot limit is at the eave of the structure, which is fairly typical. All of the height limit that we're asking for as a variance is all in the roof. And that goes to the design and the character of the steep roofs of all the other structures that are on the estate. So in trying to keep within that framework, the pitch of the roofs exceeds the height limit beyond the 50 feet. And the measurements that we have in front of you, the 85-foot height limit, is as conservative as we can get, and it covers all the elements except for one chimney that extends beyond that. So it goes to the tip top of the lightning rods that are above the ridge lines on the building. So we feel that the request for the conditional permit for the planned unit development and for the height variance are all justified in that they meet the underlying intent of the zoning district and the overall Buncombe County zoning ordinance, and that they create no adverse effects to off-site or on-site public health, safety, and welfare issues. The practical difficulties, both physical and fiscal, within the economics that we're in the site that we're dealing with, push us to a smaller footprint and a higher envelope, three-dimensional envelope. and that these conditions are particular only to this location on the estate or on the estate. We don't see this as putting the county at risk in terms of establishing precedent anywhere else. For the most part, the commercial service zone district outside of the Biltmore Estate Historic Overlay are in relatively flat areas that are more adaptable and able to receive hotel properties and commercial structures. They tend to be in the valley floors. Our valley floors just happen to be all floodplains. And then lastly, the special nature of overlay districts and the differences in language that we currently have that we're still trying to work through, and we'll come back to modify those with staffs at a later point in time. But given all of that, that's why we're here for the request. Those are the three requests that we have. We feel that they should be acceptable to the county, but we're here today to answer any questions that you may have or any questions that adjacent property owners may have. Thank you.
It might be helpful, Mr. Hazard, if you could point out on the elevation where you're talking about the 50-foot height and the 85-foot height. I have here the big one that you could show to the board.
There is a small exhibit that's 11 by 17 that's being passed around.
I'll hold you.
Yeah. In essence, the 85 feet that we're asking for is to the top of the lightning rod, which is on this ridge at the highest point of the lodge. And the point I was making is that to this predominant eave line that runs along the structure here, that eave line is at 49 feet, 3 inches. So just to give you some relative reference points there. The inn on the estate is about 115 feet to the ridge. And of course, the Biltmore house is 123 feet to the ridge. The other point that I wanted to make in terms of off-site impacts and negating those is the shortest distance we have to adjacent property is really to those that are occupied as part of Biltmore Forest. There's a reason why Mr. Vanderbilt located the house where he did, and partly it's for the views, and partly is behind that house, which separates that house from Biltmore Forest, is a ridge line that goes through an area called Lone Pine. Lone Pine and the Overlook ridge line separates predominantly most of the estate from Biltmore Forest. That ridge line exceeds the height of the Biltmore house. It also exceeds the height of this proposed lodge on average about 80 feet above what we're asking for. So that physical barrier goes a long ways toward mitigating and minimizing any impact that there might be off the estate. So.
And one more question about that height. How about the habitable area? Are there any rooms to be in that roof area that are above the 49-foot height?
No, the roof area is predominantly all storage and mechanical equipment. So.
Right. How close is the closest structure to this building, either occupied or unoccupied? Roughly, I mean, I don't expect down to the foot.
Well, the closest structure would be the on the estate is the Deer Park restaurant and the Lion Crest facility, which is a meeting facility on the estate. And those are right at a quarter mile. They're just a little over 1,200 feet as the crow flies.
All right, other questions, comments?
Just out of curiosity, when you go down like where Deer Park is, where is the structure going to be from there? I mean, I know you can look at this, but I'm not good at that. But I mean, where is the actual structure going to be in comparison to like the winery and the inn, which is a great place?
Yeah,
but I mean,
this falls half, again, under the guise in the code of trying to cluster things, is we cluster things on the estate as well. They're dispersed only because of the size of the estate. It is 3 miles from the house to the winery. Halfway between those two is the Deer Park area. And in Deer Park, there is the Deer Park restaurant, the Lion Crest meeting facility, the horseback riding facility is there, and the carriage ride facility. This lodge is, if you came onto the estate came through the lodge gate, got to the ticket booth. Instead of turning left to go to the house, he went straight, which is, for lack of a better term, it's called service road because it went to the service of the back of the house originally. So if you climb to under 40 and climb to the top of that, there's a stop sign. You turn right to go to Deer Park. If you turn right, go to Deer Park. At the past Deer Park, or right at Deer Park, where the horseback riding facility is, there's a road that goes to the left and a ridge that goes out toward the French Broad River. So this is out at the end of that ridge. There's a huge forest cover and stand of pines that are in that area that were planted over 100 years ago that are all in there. So it's in the Deer Park area, but as is typical of the sort of geomorphology of the area in Buncombe County, is it's sort of shaped like your hand, is that from a central location you have ridges that go out separated by the valleys. And on the estate, the roads run down through the valleys, and development activity occurs up on the ridges.
Thank you. I had in my mind that it was down closer to Antler Hill, and
No,
and
it's-
there weren't hardly any trees down there, with that big area. So
We're
I
working
was
on
just
getting more
curious.
trees down there after that was done. But this is in the middle of the estate.
I see.
It's on an area it's on the edge of a meadow in the forest, an area that we refer to as Patch Adams, because some of the filming was done there. But it's, from a guest experience standpoint, one of the objectives of what we're doing is that, aside from possibly some construction activity, is that while this is under construction, it's not visible to any of the guests. It's in an isolated area. Once the approach road is built to it, all the structure and parking and everything is within the forest. And there's really only one location from which guests, after it's constructed, will be able to see it. And that's on the lower River Road. If you passed Deer Park and continued down to the River Road and you turned right to go to Antler Hill Village and the estate, from that intersection, if you turn around 180 degrees and looked up on that hillside where the sheep are, this sits up above the sheep barn, back in those trees.
Thank you.
Sure.
I wish you knew a little more about this project.
That's why I said I'm not going to talk.
I've been lost in more areas out there than people know about.
Any other questions or comments from here? Are there any comments from the?
Chair, if I could, just two exhibits we need to make sure to get in for the record. The application to which Mr. Hazard has referred, I believe board members have copies of it. Application along with the plans we would offer as petitioner's exhibit 1 for all 3 applications. And in addition, when looking at the staff's draft findings, we'd like to also include in the record the notices to the public that were provided by the county staff, so that we have that as part of the record. And then the last thing is that if you would like to see excerpts from your code about the inconsistencies between the underlying commercial service district and the overlay, I do have copies of those, which I'm happy to hand up to the board. I have a couple copies for staff.
All right, that'll be fine. Is that all that you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'll move right on. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak to this project? We'll have to swear you in, sir.
My name is Charles Brown, Commissioner down here from Forest.
Okay.
I'd like to know where the construction road.
I've got to swear you in, yeah.
That bad.
And I'll see my microphone.
We keep a record of this.
All right.
You solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? All right, please go ahead.
I'd just like to find out where the construction road is. Who am I talking to? Him or you or him?
Could you just repeat your name for
Charles
Mila?
W. Grimes,
Thank you, sir.
303 Vanderbilt Road. All right. Where is the construction road? It won't be coming through Biltmore Forest or anything like that, will it?
No, the construction access is limited, and it'll come through the lodge gate.
Lodge, all right.
Yeah, the
That's all I
same
wanna
as
know.
construction on the end, and
That's all I
Yeah.
want to know. Thank you.
All right. Any other comments, or anyone wants to speak? If not, I'm going to close the public hearing at this time and I would like your comments, board, and I would entertain a motion on the item with the last numbers of 68. And, oh, by the way, Mr. Hazard,
Yes.
for all three of the submissions this morning, is the information you have provided to the board true and accurate to the best of your knowledge and ability?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay, thank you. Don't be shy, board.
Peggy, you roll again.
I just did one, but I could certainly do, do you want all three of them?
Well, we're gonna take them
Do
one at a
one at a
time. Take
time.
number 68 first. Bear with
Alright.
us, folks.
Mr. Chair, based on the evidence presented to this board, according to the following exhibits, the petitioner's application, the submitted development plans, the GIS maps, and the findings of fact worksheet, I move that this,
If you could also add on that the notices and the code sections that were submitted by the petitioner.
notices and codes submitted. I move that this board adopt the following findings of fact. 1 through 6A.
Okay, yeah.
I second.
Okay. Who did the second? James Wilson seconded the motion, and Peggy made the motion. Okay, is there any further discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Let the record show there is unanimous vote. Okay, now we need a motion to approve or deny the application.
I make a motion that we approve the application.
All right, James Wilson made the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, that was Lisa Stevens. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, let the minutes show there was unanimous vote. Okay, turn to item again with 69. Okay. I would entertain a motion to adopt the findings of fact.
Could we also, with the findings of fact, make sure that you add the notices and the code sections?
Okay,
Or you could just say that for the three proposed.
okay.
What was his wording?
He wanted to add the notices and the
Okay.
code submitted, the same thing as on the last one.
Let me go ahead and.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, based upon the evidence presented to this board, including the following exhibits, the petitioner's application, the submitted development plans, the GIS maps, the finding of fact worksheet, the notices and the codes, I move that this board adopt the following findings of facts, 1 through 6A.
And I
Okay,
second.
is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Peggy made the motion and James Wilson did the second. Okay, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, same conditions as the prior motion, Madam Secretary. Okay, we now need a motion to approve or deny the application.
This
Mr.
one is the variance request.
No, that's,
69.
This is.
no,
this
the
is
variance
second.
request is coming. This is still the conditional use.
All right, I'm with you.
Got to keep the orderly mind in here, folks.
Chairman, I move that we approve the application as submitted
Okay,
on
is
number
there a second?
69.
I'll second.
Okay. Madam Secretary, did you get the names on that?
Mr. Wilson made the motion and
Lisa Stevens.
Lisa Stevens seconded it.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none, let it show that there was a unanimous vote. Okay, now if you'll turn to the variance proposal. That's number 70 on the second line up there. You wanna go ahead?
Mr. Chairman, based upon the evidence presented to this board, including the following exhibits: the petitioner's application, the submitted development plan, the GIS map, the findings of fact worksheet, notices and codes, I move that this board adopt the following findings of facts, A through 6A, 1 through 6A.
Okay, is there a second to that motion?
I'll
Okay,
second.
James Wilson seconded the motion. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, unanimous vote. Okay, now we need a motion to approve or deny the variance.
I'll make,
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. That was Jim Guido with the second. Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Let the minutes show that there was unanimous vote.
Thank you, Mr.
So you-
Chairman.
And thank you for an
Vice
excellent
Chairman,
presentation.
and the staff.
Anything the
Outstanding
Biltmore
project.
Company does, they do well.
That's right.
It's a pleasure. I'm
Thank you.
sorry for the laborious process, but that comes out of our,
Right out of this black book, right?
yeah, right out of the black book.
all what we signed up for.
Okay,
all.
thank you very much.
thank you.
Okay, is there any other business before us? All right, we will adjourn at 12:52. Thank you for coming. On next meetings, be a little more forthcoming, folks,
wait
so I
for
don't have
another one
to
on
drag it out of you.
I can't wait for another place on the state.
But we wouldn't recognize you